Now we'll have a look at how to animate the camera so that the scene doesn't look as static, especially during those in-between frames when not much is happening. For example, here, when that number 2 falls down, and you can see not much is happening between this and this. So if I was to animate the camera, that would give the entire scene a bit more life. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to the beginning, and first of all, what I want to do is to find the extremes. What I mean by that is, what's the lowest that the characters go down, and what's the highest they go up to? So the lowest, of course, is going to be here on this ground plane, but let's find out the highest as well. So when it gets stretched and jumps up there, so around about there is where the top point is. So as long as I can see the base and the top part of this, we'll be fine. So let me just go and move the camera up and then maybe zoom in a little bit. I started losing the base here. So I'm going to go down a little. And let me just go and see what that looks like. That's looking fine. And to give this a bit more character, especially near the end where we get the text here, we can actually use a slightly wider angle lens so that when things kind of get closer to the camera, they get more distorted. So if I go to this camera and then change the focal length from, let's say, 36 to, say, maybe 25 mil, but zoom in instead, and then push this up. Let me exaggerate this even more maybe. So maybe change it to 15 mil, so it's super wide. So there's more distortion here, where the text kind of gets closer to the camera here. There's more perspective distortion here. So I'm going to go back a little. And then maybe start from here. Now what I also want to do is to go and make sure that on the final frame here, the text or the camera around the text is centered. So for that, I'll go to my camera's coordinates. And I actually want to see my title and action safe areas here. So on the keyboard, I'm going to press Alt-V. And I'll go to Save Frames. I'll click anywhere that's empty here. So I can turn on the Save Frames. I'll turn on the Title Save Frame. Also the Action Save Frame. I can click and drag these in and out. Let's say that's going to be the boundary of where my final text is going to be visible. So from here to here. I can of course now select the camera, reset the rotations, and then play with the X here until I can kind of center the text. Let's see what that looks like. So here, and at this point I can see there's so much distortion here actually. I didn't take this into account because it's switching from one, which is far away from the camera, to this, which is now too close to the camera because of the distortion we created. So I'm going to change my focal length back, let's say to 25 mil, and then zoom out a little. And I'll try and get this to look similar to that number 1, size-wise, and that's looking about right now. And let me just go to the coordinates again, and let's see what this looks like. So I'll just go back, and I'm going to turn off the deformers here by going to Filter, Deformer, and I'll also turn off this arrow here. So I'll go to Filter and turn off the world axis, and I'll just go and play it again now. So here's what we have. Now that jump looks like it's getting too close to the top part here. So this section is getting too close to the top part. So I'm going to go to the camera and lift this up just a little bit so that the text comes down. So it feels more balanced now. Let's play that again. And that's looking good. And what I'll do now is to go back to the beginning, keyframe the Z of the camera, that's this position here, and then I'll go forward until about here, where I can see the final text, and I'll pull out a little bit. I'll keyframe it again. So you see that the camera is going to start pulling back slowly. It's going to be very subtle. Let me exaggerate this a little bit more. So I'm going to hold down Shift so I can jump between these keyframes as I drag my playhead. I'll pull this further back. Keyframe again. And let's play again. So it's now a little quicker. Now at this stage, what I want to do, once we see these words, let's go, is to pull the camera further back, as if it's going to kind of spring back, and then shoot off into the scene. So I'm going to go here. After this last keyframe, I'll go forward, let's say by 7 or 8 frames, and I'll pull this Z further back, keyframe, then go forward, and then push the Z further in. So we go past that text, as if the text is flying, but really it's the camera that's flying past the text. And I'll keyframe this. Now if I go back and play this section, this is what it will look like. That's too slow for the last part, so I'm going to take this keyframe, push this closer. Let's see what that looks like. That's getting better. Let's open up the graph now. I'll take the camera, press H so I can see its keyframes. You can see, until this section, the camera is slowly animating. Then the camera flies in. But before it flies in, we have an anticipation here. So let's go to those frames. And I'll select these and press S so I can zoom into those. And then first I'll go and increase the hang time here with the Command key. Let's see what that feels like. Let me just go back. Let's see now. And I want this part of the animation, this part, to be a little quicker. So I'm going to select this last keyframe and push this in. See what that looks like now. I think that's looking much better now. So take a look. The Z of the camera keeps animating really slowly and gradually until here. Then there's an abrupt change in speed. Then it shoots up in the opposite direction. So here's that animation once again. Now I think the only problem is that we don't have enough time to read those words properly. So I'm going to go back. And then I'll have to move these keyframes, all of these, towards right a little bit. So we see the word let's go. And then maybe we want to give this 1 second before the camera shoots off. So I'll select all of these keyframes. So if this last keyframe is on 263, if I go forward by 24 more frames, so that would make it 287, that should give us an extra second there. So let me just go here, 287. I'll just drag this here with the Shift key so it doesn't move up and down. And now if I play, that should give us 1 extra second to read those words. And this simple camera animation is going to help a lot when it comes to staging and appeal.